What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're doing a bit of a Q&A, a pre-season Q&A, but also a Jadon Sancho price reaction as well. So I wasn't going to put a video out on Saturday, but I had to do the Patreon Q&A anyway. So I wanted to give you a bit of an insight into what those Q&A videos look like. So I've made this one public. And obviously, if you want more for pre-season, you want to get some of your questions answered throughout the season as well, then do check the link in the description below for the Patreon link. And also, Jadon Sancho's literally been priced about 10-20 minutes ago at the time I'm recording this, so I want to give a quick reaction to that price, what my thoughts are, before I do a proper video on it tomorrow, which will come out on Sunday. So keep an eye out for that. Give this video a like if you enjoy it, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Let's jump into it. Okay, so before we jump into the questions, I wanted to do a reaction to Jadon Sancho's price. No one asked me about this when I asked for the questions on the Patreon Slack, mostly because we didn't know the price at the time that I cut off the number of questions we were going to have. Initial instinct is 9.5 million, I think, was an obvious price. That was my initial guess, just because it's the same price as Rashford. You don't want to underprice him too much, because if he bangs in game week 1 or 2 for Man United, right? Man United players, they often get bought much quicker than other players. His price will go up way too quick. So I've seen people say he should have been 8.5. I think you were crazy if you ever thought that was going to happen. I think he could have been 10 or 10.5. He's potentially... I'm not saying he definitely will be. He's potentially that good. The thing is, there's a Bundesliga tax, right? So people, when they come from the Bundesliga, everyone thinks they're just not going to perform as well because it's much harder in the Premier League, blah, 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 blah. I've actually worked out some numbers on that based on some stats and stuff like that, which I'm going to show you in the video tomorrow. I think it's quite interesting. Let me give you a bit of a spoiler. Even with the Bundesliga tax percentages taken off, his numbers are still really good. And the advantage that he has over like a Mahrez or a Foden, etc., is he's going to be completely nailed on. I'd be very surprised if he misses many matches for Man United. He's not going to be on penalties, of course, but he's going to play in that wide right, wide left position, depending on who else is playing at the time, right? We're not going to go into it too much. So I think it's a fair price. Will I start with him? Possibly not. But I think at 9.5 million, there's a conversation to be had. And a lot of it's going to revolve around captaincy. If you're not going to captain Bruno, could you potentially go for Sancho instead? Hope that Man United don't get as many penalties and then spend that money elsewhere. I think you possibly could. So I like the price. I think it's a fair price. I think he's much better than most of us realise as well. And I think he could be a good FPL option, but I appreciate it's maybe a little bit of a risk. But remember, not every player that comes to the league doesn't perform straight away. Look at Mo Salah. I know it wasn't the Bundesliga, but he was brilliant. Has Sancho got that talent? I think he probably has. Okay, so this is basically how I do the Patreon Q&As every week. I'll either put out a message or have a Slack channel where you can put your questions in, or I'll put up an article and you can submit your questions under that. And then if there's not too many, I'll answer them all. If there's loads, then I'll pick the best ones, etc. But for this one, I think we're answering most of them. So Georgios, one of the Patreons, said, do you usually leave money in the bank at the beginning of the game? And if yes, how much? I'm thinking about 0.5 million, which allows me to switch to several players to a more expensive one if needed. Maybe 1 million is more appropriate. So I'll tell you now, I'm not saying it's never happened because my memory's really bad and I've been playing FPL for 11 years. But I don't recall too many times where I keep money in the bank at the start of the season, right? I just always find a way to spend it. There's always an upgrade. What I would say is you shouldn't be worried if you have got some money in the bank, as long as you've got a team that you don't think you can improve with that cash. Because essentially, look, I've not got the numbers to hand or anything. I've not worked it out. But every 0.5 million is going to be worth X amount of points to your team, right? So as long as you get it right, it's always going to be worth spending that extra money. Sometimes it doesn't work out like that. A cheaper player can outscore a more expensive one. But at the start of the season, when we haven't made money on our teams, etc., you're going to want to spend as much as possible. What I would say is if you've got an idea of a player you might want only if they score, then my thinking would be you should probably consider that player a little bit more to just start in your team rather than worrying about keeping money back to get them in. That saves you a transfer as well and just gets the money spent straight away. So ultimately, I don't think it's a problem, but I don't usually do it. So if you've got the right price points, then you're probably in a good position to swap anyway if you need it. I guess like if I think about 7.5 million pound players, do you want to be able to have the money to go to Grealish? Fair enough. If you've got 7.5 million forwards, do you want 0.5 to go to Calvert-Lewin, etc.? If anything, I'd rather just have higher price players where I can, like as many as I can, to be able to drop down if needed. So do I do it? Not very often. Do I think it's a good idea? It can be, but you need to make sure you've definitely got the team you want and there's no improvements that you can make with that extra money. Okay, so second question, will Jota start game week 1 because of Firmino's busy Copa America workload? The honest answer is I don't know, right? But for all these players, like in the Euros and stuff like that, Copa America, we're just going to have to wait and see what the managers say. When do they get back to training? When are they able to train with the first squad? I mean, most of them probably will be able to straight away, right? Unless they're carrying an injury. How many pre-season minutes do they get under their belt? Do they play in the the final pre-season game, etc.? And what's the manager saying? These are things to think about. What I would say is, even if Jota does start game week 1, I feel like you're going to get this question every single week. Well, is he going to start game week 2? Is he going to start game week 3, 4, 5, 6, etc.? And realistically, Firmino, any player that's been playing in the summer is not going to be out too long. I'd be very surprised if any of them miss like 1 or 2 game weeks, right? If they're fully fit, okay? And obviously it's going to depend how good of a shape they come back off holiday and stuff like that. So even if he does start game week 1, you've possibly got a problem later on. The only way I would say he's completely nailed is if one of those players doesn't play, right? And interestingly, in today's pre-season game for Liverpool, Oxlade-Chamberlain started up front. Apparently that's something that Klopp wants to look at. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. But I think Jota is what he is. He's a great player when he gets minutes. He's not always going to get those minutes. And unless we know for sure that Firmino is out, you're always going to have those considerations to have. Okay, next question from Business Cat. Do you reckon Raul Jimenez can come back from his injury and be a force again? Has he been fairly priced at 7.5? A Watkins to Jimenez switch in game week 4 looks very convenient. It absolutely does, right? The fixtures are great. Can he? Yeah, of course he can. Will he? That's anyone's guess. I just don't know. The good thing is he's obviously starting to get some pre-season minutes. So there's obviously no major issue with him playing football matches right now. I think in the first one, he only played like 30 minutes. So we'll have to wait and see how much that kind of ramps up as we get closer to game week 1. Is 7.5 million a fair price? It probably is. I think he's probably quite difficult to price for FPL because you can't just drop him down because he hasn't played, right? He got injured essentially. That happens to players. You see players break legs or whatever and they're out for a season. You can't just drop them down massively in price. So I think he's probably in line with the other players around that kind of 7.5 price point. Looking at the fixtures, you're right. From game week 4, it's Watford, Brentford, Southampton, Newcastle, Villa, Leeds, Everton, Palace, West Ham, Norwich, Burnley. The fixtures are great right up until game week 14. I think that's the beauty of Jimenez. The first 3 fixtures, they're not ideal. We don't know what the manager's going to do. We don't know how attacking they're going to be. We don't know how good defensively they're going to be. Yes, we're maybe not going to get a good representation of that in the first 3 matches because they're tough, but we can at least see how many minutes Jimenez is getting. And if he's getting a lot by game week 4, potentially there is that switch. So do I think he can? Yes. But obviously these big injuries, like especially head injuries, I think it's not even just about the physical side, it's also the mental side. What when he's in a competitive game, the ball comes in, he's got to head it in or whatever it might be. I mean, I've not read too much about Jimenez's particular story around this, so I don't know what kind of mind frame he's in, but there's all those things to consider. So definitely not one for the game week 1 squad, but I would possibly consider him later on. And I think that's the beauty of Watkins. There's so many strikers priced at 7.5 million or below that I think they're really good just to move around when you need to. So this question is from Path about Greenwood. With Rashford possibly needing surgery, I don't even actually think it's a possibility. I think he does need the surgery. It's just a case of when he has it, which I'm not really sure why he hasn't gone and had it yet. Maybe because he's having his holiday or whatever. I don't know. Is Greenwood a good option for Man United's opening fixtures? The thing is, I still don't know if Rashford being out makes Greenwood absolutely nailed. One of the pros he has is that he has been available for pretty much all pre-season training, so that obviously helps. And the fixtures are good, right? I'm looking at it here. Leeds, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle, West Ham, Villa. They're not amazing, some of them. Like West Ham's fairly difficult, I guess. Wolves might be, but ultimately I like that run of fixtures. I do want to target it. So I think an attacker is good. But here's the thing. If Sancho comes in and plays on the right, then Pogba or Martial could possibly play on the left. And I think Greenwood will get minutes. I don't think he's just not going to play at all. But he's not going to play instead of Cavani. I didn't really mention, by the way, Greenwood too much on the video when I was talking about fixtures the other day. But I was going to say on that video that for me, I just don't really fancy him that much. Because I just think there's this talk about Man United getting in the defensive midfielder, then playing Pogba and Bruno in front. And then obviously then you'd have someone on the left, someone on the right. One of those positions would obviously be Sancho and the other one will be taken up. It could be Greenwood. But is Martial going to be completely frozen out? And I think Cavani's going to mostly play through the middle when he's fit and available and there's no Europe. So Let's wait and see who gets the most preseason minutes for Man United. It could just be a case that Greenwood is the most fit and available. Like we see that at Man City sometimes. There's a player at the start of the season that gets a lot of games in a row because they've had time off over the summer. And Greenwood's obviously been involved with preseason already. So he's potentially a good option. And around 7.5 million in midfield, there are lots of options, so you could downgrade later on. But right now, I'd be looking at Sancho, Fernandes, rather than looking at Greenwood. I know they're more expensive, but with the fixtures, they're completely nailed on. That's probably who I'd be looking at. Okay, so this one's from Chaz. Should I be factoring in a price point in my midfield for the likes of Sancho, Son and Mahrez? So Chaz knew that Sancho was going to be 9 to 10 million because he put this question in before the price was out. This would be to save the headache of having to downgrade elsewhere to accommodate if they start the season well. I like price points. I like the flexibility of a starting game week 1 team that you can move around easily. But at the end of the day, you are not going to be able to cover every single price point in every single position. So if I said to you, yes, do this, maybe go for Salah and Son. So you can pretty much afford anyone apart from De Bruyne, Sterling, Mane, Fernandes, etc. Right? Let's just say I say go for Salah and Son. Well, what happens if Kane's really good? Then you've got to make 2 moves anyway to get him. So unless you fancy one of these players to start with anyway, then I personally wouldn't be too concerned. When I talk about price points and flexibility, I mostly want to be able to move for any player in 2 moves if I can. Now, obviously, sometimes it's, I'd have to get rid of Salah, but with those big premium calls, that's the calls you have to make. If you really want a different premium, you got to get rid of this one instead. So I like that price point because I think Son's maybe being a little bit undervalued. If Kane goes, could he then become the main man? He'd also probably take penalties as well, so that's something to consider. Mahrez, like I just said, he could be that player at Man City that plays week in, week out for the start of the season just due to fitness concerns of other players. And obviously I've just said I like Sancho as well, so I think it's a good price point. I don't think there's a problem with covering it, but if you just don't fancy any of those players, don't buy one just for the sake of it. Okay, so one from Luke. Thoughts on Ben Chilwell? He's in my draft, and with Emerson and Alonso looking out of the picture, do you think he's being overlooked? So just on that point, I don't think Chilwell is going to, maybe I'll be wrong about this, but just going on what happened last season, I don't think Chilwell is going to play week in, week out. But I do think, again, a bit like maybe Cavani at the start of the season, because there's no Europe, you're more likely to be able to play him week in, week out. But when Europe starts, there probably will be the odd game that he gets rested. But I guess for your question, the start of the season, it's not really going to make a difference. But yes, Chilwell's obviously going to play the most minutes. I think we know that now, looking at what happened last year. He'll miss the odd game. So he's a good option. I really like him. From Chelsea defence, okay, Rudiger might be a bit more nailed, but in terms of goal threat, Chilwell is definitely better. The fixtures are perhaps better than they look, with Arsenal and Spurs not being as hard as the fixture difficulty rating says. Only 2 games where I don't see them getting a clean sheet, right? So I've got the fixtures here. Palace, Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, Spurs, Man City. Now, personally, when I buy players for my Game Week 1 side, I don't tend to. There might be certain cases like goalkeepers, 4.5 million defenders where I want to rotate them over a long period of time and not spend transfers on them. I don't usually look past the first 6 game weeks. So straight away, Game week 7 to 11 is brilliant. I really want Chilwell for that run. But up until game week 6, they've got to play Man City, Spurs, Liverpool, Arsenal. Now, again, we're still 3 weeks out at the time of recording this from the season starting. So, will Kane be at Spurs? No. Possibly not, sorry. And if he's not, will that hurt them? Yes, it probably will. But let's see who they buy, right? We can't really discuss that. It's game week 5. It's a long way away. So when you're saying the 2 fixtures you're talking about for no clean sheet is probably Man City, Liverpool, I guess. So could they keep clean sheets in the other 4? They absolutely could. They're a great defence, right? Brilliant. Second best in the league behind Man City for last season. But I don't like to, personally, I don't like to go for, they could. I hope they do. They could. Because, yes, they could, but the odds are surely against them when they play City, Spurs, Arsenal and Liverpool in the first 4. And that is probably enough to put me off. And even Aston Villa, they've got Buendia now. I don't know what's happening with Leon Bailey. There seemed to be a lot of talk about that on Twitter the other day, and that's kind of gone, but who knows. Grealish could still be there as well. So they're no pushovers either. So it's not that I think Chelsea are going to lose those games at all, or that they can't keep a clean sheet, but they'll definitely keep the amount of goals down. But could they lose the odd goal here or there? I think they probably could. So to answer your question, yes, I think Ben Chilwell is being overlooked, but to be honest, I do think he's being overlooked for the right reasons. Like Luke Shaw's got better fixtures if he's available, right? If. And obviously, most people are going for a Liverpool defender, and a lot of people have got cheaper defenders as well to rotate in. So it's just hard, maybe, in my eyes, to justify the price for Chilwell with those fixtures. To me, I just don't look at a player and see those fixtures and think, yeah, I want them. I'm going to go for a cheaper defender, a different defender with better fixtures, and hope that I come out on top. And that's just how I play the game. So yes, he's being overlooked, in my opinion, for the right reasons. But from game week 7, amazing option. FPL DCG, Smith Rowe, the new number 10 at Arsenal, 5.5 million. Harrison, Rafinha, Buendia and Sarr are all 6.5 million. Is there a case for leaving big money in the bank until we see international players return? Salah, Mane, Son, the only real big hitters who did not play during the summer. Lots of value in midfield. Ultimately, my answer is no, because I just think Fernandes is going to be fine. Yes, okay, he played in the summer. He's going to be back before like the England boys, etc. And also, right, if players get big transfers, let's say Kane goes to City, let's say obviously Sancho's just come to Man United as well, how long do they want to be out until they start playing? I just don't think it's going to be that long. So I guess it kind of comes into the question I got asked at the start about whether to leave money in the bank. I personally wouldn't do it. I'm already thinking about my team, and I'm struggling to get enough money that I want for my team. So I just don't see why, you know, instead of having Sancho or Fernandes, for example, who almost certainly be in my team, or Son or someone like that, then I downgrade to a 6.5. But I don't know. I just feel like Salah's already in pre-season training, and so is Son. So straight away, even if you were worried about everyone else, that's like, what, over 22 million straight away. And then you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's had the summer off as well. That's 7.5. Robertson, 7 million. He hardly played in the Euros as well, just the group game. So I guess my answer is no. I don't see the point in leaving that much money in the bank personally, but that's just because the players I want, I know I'm not going to have much money left over. There we go, that is it for this one. Like I said, a little bit of a hybrid, small Sancho reaction, and obviously doing my normal Patreon Q&A. So like I said at the start, I do these videos every single game week, so you can get your questions in and go from there. It's for the top 2 tiers on Patreon. So if you want to check that out, there's a link in the description below. And a big shout out and thank you to everybody that has already signed up as well, including Ben T, Jonathan C, and Batol, who have signed up since the last video as well. So thank you very much for watching. Do give it a like if you enjoyed it, and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Tomorrow I have a video based around Jadon Sancho to come out. I'm going to talk about his stats, whether we should be going with him, what I think about the price, a little bit more detail than we went into today. So please do look forward to that, and obviously loads more content coming out next week. Thank you for your support so far in pre-season. Hopefully see you throughout the whole of the season. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you again soon.